Is the bucket strategy better than the Guyton-Klinger Guardrails? If you're here hoping I'll answer that question, I'm afraid I have to disappoint you right from the start. The reason is simple. The question itself is based on a misunderstanding. So, where does this confusion come from? And is there a better way of thinking about withdrawal strategies to make more informed decisions? That's exactly what we'll cover in today's video. If you find topics like this helpful, take a moment to subscribe for future content. Your support is very much appreciated. Let's begin with where the confusion comes from. I've noticed that some financial institutions and experts sometimes lump these different strategies together, which can be a bit misleading. For example, you might see articles from Vanguard or US Bank that lump together the 4% rule, Guyton-Klinger Guardrails, and the bucket strategy, as if they are interchangeable. Here's the thing, they're not. The bucket strategy doesn't actually tell you how much to withdraw each year. So you can't just swap out Guyton-Klinger for the bucket strategy. The bucket strategy is all about how you manage your portfolio and the rules for drawing from it, whereas the Guyton-Klinger Guardrails focus specifically on determining the withdrawal rate. Another point of confusion. Some articles suggest you can mix and match these strategies, and to some extent, that's true. But you have to be careful. You can't, for example, combine the 4% rule with Guyton-Klinger. One is a fixed dollar plus inflation strategy, and the other adjusts your withdrawals each year based on market performance. Today, I want to clear up this confusion. We're going to break down the 4 different components of retirement withdrawal strategies, so you can better understand how to combine these elements to meet your income needs. So, what are the key components of a retirement withdrawal strategy? There are 4 main components: when, where, how, and how much. Each of these represents a separate decision point. When is about how often you make withdrawals and rebalance your portfolio. Where is about asset location and the order in which you withdraw from your various accounts. How is about how you manage your portfolio when you're making withdrawals. How much is about deciding on your withdrawal rate. Each of these is a separate decision you need to make. For example, deciding how often you'll make withdrawals is a different choice from deciding how you'll manage your portfolio or how much you'll withdraw each year. Let's dive a bit deeper into each of these components. First up, when, which concerns how often you'll withdraw funds and rebalance your portfolio. This is pretty straightforward. You can choose to make withdrawals annually, half-yearly, quarterly, or monthly. Keep in mind, you don't have to rebalance your portfolio at the same frequency as your withdrawals. For example, you might withdraw money quarterly but only rebalance your portfolio once a year. Some people like to do both at the same time to keep things simple. This can help make sure you don't forget to rebalance, which is important in retirement, to keep your portfolio aligned with your risk tolerance. I cover portfolio rebalancing in more detail in another video, and will provide a link to this in the description. Next, let's talk about where, which is all about the asset location of your retirement investments, and the order in which you withdraw from them. In the UK, there are 3 types of investment accounts: taxable, tax-deferred, and tax-free. These correspond to General Investment Account or GIA, pensions including workplace and SIP pensions, and finally, Individual Savings Accounts or ISA. When you're deciding which accounts to draw from first, you need to think about your tax situation and whether leaving a legacy is important to you. If it is, then you should draw from your pension last, since it's not subject to inheritance tax. On the other hand, if maximizing portfolio value and spending is a priority, I'd suggest drawing from your stocks and shares ISA last. This is because ISAs offer tax-free growth, allowing your investments more time to compound. One thing that seems to be consistent in Vanguard's analysis is that spending down your taxable GIA first consistently gives the best results, which is hardly surprising. You generally want to deplete funds from the least tax-advantaged accounts first, saving the most tax-advantaged accounts for last. So, in summary, the withdrawal orders with the best outcomes are GIA, ISA, pension, and GIA, pension, ISA. This is probably the foundation for planning your withdrawals. However, there are a couple of things to keep in mind here. If you're thinking about working part-time in retirement, be careful about triggering the Money Purchase Annual Allowance or MPAA by taking taxable withdrawals from your pension. This will reduce your future pension contribution limit from £60,000 to just £10,000. Also, while it's generally recommended to spend down your general investment account first, there might be times when it makes sense to dip into your ISA, and it's all about tax. For example, if you have some big expenses coming up or additional income from other sources, using your ISA to supplement your GIA withdrawals could help keep you in a lower tax bracket. And if you're planning to retire early, remember that you can't access your workplace or SIP pensions before age 55, rising to 57 in 2028. So you might need a larger ISA to tide you over until then. Moving on to how, which is all about how you manage your portfolio and draw from it. There are two main approaches, the bucket strategy and the total return approach. The contemporary bucket strategy divides your portfolio into 3 buckets, using a time segmentation approach. This corresponds to short-term, medium-term, and long-term expenses. I'm not a fan of the 3-bucket strategy for several reasons, and will point you to my other video discussing this in more depth. I will briefly summarize these here. First, there's no clear and authoritative guidance on bucket maintenance and decision rules, especially when there are so many to pick from. The other significant challenge is complexity. As Michael Kitts has pointed out, standard rebalancing actually makes most bucket strategies unnecessary in the first place, at least from an asset allocation perspective. Plus, it often leads to a relatively conservative portfolio, which might not last as long as you need it to. This is crucial as people are living longer and facing longer retirements. This brings us to the total return approach. It's just simpler, and as Javier Estrada concluded in his analysis, it consistently outperformed the bucket approach. You just withdraw what you need and then rebalance your portfolio. The total return approach proves remarkably resilient, as Kitts and Estrada both concluded, when they tested static strategies under challenging market conditions. There's also a middle ground, the simplified bucket strategy I cover in another video. It is an example of a bucket overlay on the total return approach. This straightforward 6-year, 2-bucket strategy is designed to offer peace of mind without the unnecessary complexity of the 3-bucket strategy. In essence, it's a simple 76-24 portfolio, structured to maintain sufficient short-term liquidity for 6 years. That's it. Finally, let's talk about how much, which is about determining your withdrawal rate. There are 3 main approaches. First, the 4% rule is a good example of withdrawal strategies, often referred to as dollar plus inflation or constant dollar. This is simple but inflexible. You decide an initial withdrawal rate of your retirement portfolio, say 4% in the case of the 4% rule. Then, in each subsequent year, you adjust that withdrawal amount for inflation to maintain your purchasing power. A variant of this forms the basis of the Guyton-Klinger Guardrails, to calculate the target income, before applying the guardrail rules. Second, percentage of portfolio, as the name implies, calculates the withdrawal as a fixed percentage of the portfolio value each year. This isn't particularly helpful even if, theoretically and mathematically, you can never deplete your portfolio. 5% of £100 will not pay my bills. It also results in highly volatile and unpredictable spending patterns that vary with market performance. However, it is the basis of the Vanguard dynamic spending rule to calculate the target income, before applying the floor-ceiling rules. Third, dynamic withdrawal strategies vary the withdrawal amount based on portfolio and market performance. These include the Guyton-Klinger Guardrails, Vanguard dynamic spending rule, Kitts' ratcheting rule, Bengen floor-ceiling, and Cape-based withdrawal strategies. I've covered several of these in other videos, and I'll include links in the description for anyone interested in exploring these further. With the exception of the ratcheting rule, all other dynamic spending strategies assume that retirees are both able and willing to adjust their spending. Creating a discretionary spending tier, by categorizing expenses as essential versus discretionary, can provide more flexibility in your spending. Discretionary expenses, like holidays, dining out, hobbies, and subscriptions, can be reduced in down markets if necessary. But it's crucial to plan for this in advance so you know exactly where you can cut back if you need to. Now, let's walk through a simple example, to see how this framework might work in practice. First, we need to decide on the withdrawal frequency and rebalancing strategy. Withdrawing annually holds too much cash, while monthly is too frequent, so I'll opt for quarterly withdrawals. To keep things simple, I'll also use a hybrid rebalancing strategy, combining quarterly and threshold-based rebalancing. Next, I want to leave a legacy, so I'll withdraw from my general investment account first, followed by my ISA, and finally my pension, as pensions are exempt from inheritance tax. I might use my ISA to supplement GIA withdrawals to stay within the basic tax rate. Next, for portfolio management, I'll choose the total return approach for its simplicity. Since I like the psychological benefits of the bucket approach, I'll adopt the simplified 2-bucket strategy, with 6 years of cash and bonds in the short-term bucket, to mitigate against sequence of returns risk. Meanwhile, the remaining 76% of my portfolio will be invested in equities, to mitigate sequence of inflation risk and portfolio longevity risk. Finally, I need to decide on an approach to determine my withdrawal rates through retirement. The percentage of portfolio method is too volatile and largely academic, and dollar plus inflation is too rigid. Given my long retirement horizon of 35 to 40 years, I'll avoid the 4% rule and Kitz's ratcheting rule. Since 15% of my expenses are discretionary and can be adjusted in down markets, I'll likely go with the Guyton-Klinger Guardrails or Vanguard dynamic spending rule. These will enable me to spend more in better years, but I will also need to tighten my belt in down markets. Now that we have identified the 4 different components of retirement withdrawal strategies, and looked at an example, I hope this provides greater clarity on the 4 decision points you need to make when planning your retirement withdrawals. If you are still here, thank you for your time, and I hope you found this helpful. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.